you're starting to see something in the distance again. It's not a town. It's not a river. It's a road. A real road. Paved. Or at least well-trodden. This must be the road to the next city. The next caravan stop. The next place where you can trade your goods for a meal and a bed for the night. You feel a surge of hope. A desperate, childish hope that this is the end of the hard part. But you also feel a low, buzzing hum of fear. The road itself, a symbol of civilization, also represents a new set of dangers. The dangers of man. And as you'll see, sometimes, those are the worst kind of dangers of all. The journey continues, and the world just keeps getting bigger and more dangerous. The road ahead is not just a path, it's a test. And you're not sure if you're ready for it. Hey guys, tonight we're going to step way, way back in time. Close your eyes for a moment and picture the last time you traveled somewhere. Maybe it was a long flight, a smooth road trip in a car with air conditioning, or even just a ride on a quiet train. You had your phone, a comfy seat, maybe a snack from a vending machine. Now, take all of that away. Every single bit of it. No GPS, no weather app, no paved roads, no clean water, and definitely no in-flight movie. The road. It's no longer a faint, dusty track, but a wide, well-trodden scar on the landscape. A testament to the thousands of feet and hooves that have passed this way before you. It's a glorious sight. A symbol of civilization after days of fighting a wild, unforgiving world. You feel a surge of hope. A desperate, childish hope that this is the end of the hard part. The sun is still high, but its heat feels less oppressive now. The world seems a little safer. We're going on a journey to the ancient world, and I have to be honest with you, if you were to actually take this trip, the odds of you making it back in one piece are, well, let's just say they're not great. You'd probably be lucky to survive the first day. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you. But this road, this great testament to human ingenuity, also represents a new and different kind of danger. The danger of man. The very thing that built this road can also use it to prey on the weak. You're not just walking on a path, you're walking on a network, a web of commerce and conquest, and every traveler on it is either a potential ally or a potential enemy. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The most common historical fact about ancient roads is that they were not built for comfort. They were built for speed and efficiency, primarily for armies and official messages. The Roman roads, for instance, were a marvel of engineering, a series of layers of stone, gravel, and sand, all carefully compacted to create a smooth, hard surface. They allowed legions to march quickly from one end of the empire to the other. But for a civilian traveler in a rattling cart, they were anything but comfortable. You'd be bounced around like a pea in a drum, your body absorbing the constant jarring motion. A modern road trip with a few potholes is an inconvenience. An ancient road trip could leave you with a permanent spinal injury. You're standing on the edge of the known world. Or at least your known world. The year is sometime, somewhere. And all you know is that the promise of fortune, a better life, or perhaps just a desperate need to flee has pushed you to this point. The road ahead is not a road at all, but a faint, dusty track carved by the footsteps of countless others, all hoping for the same thing you are. The sun is a relentless hammer, beating down on your shoulders as you hoist a heavy sack, your entire worldly possession, and take that first step. This isn't a scenic walk. This is a gamble. You are now, by some stroke of luck, on a cart. The rhythmic creaking of the wheels and the clopping of the mule's hooves have a hypnotic quality. But every sudden lurch, every violent jolt, is a reminder that this isn't a leisurely ride. It's a battle of endurance. There are no shock absorbers, no padded seats, just a hard wooden plank and your own muscles to brace you against the relentless assault of the road. You can see why a long-distance traveler in the ancient world might be a little rough around the edges. They had to be. Their bodies were constantly being tested by the very means of their transport. Every rustle in the bushes is a potential bandit. Every drop of sweat is a tiny bit of hydration you can't afford to lose. You've been told the journey will take weeks, maybe months, and your mind races with the thought of what a week, let alone a month, of this looks like. The sandals on your feet are already beginning to chafe. and the water skin at your hip feels suspiciously light. This is not the clean, sterile journey you're used to. This is a journey that tastes of dirt, smells of sweat, and feels like a constant, low-level thrum of fear in the pit of your stomach. And let's talk about the danger of the vehicles themselves. A little-known detail about ancient travel is that carts and wagons were prone to catastrophic failure. A wheel could break, an axle could snap, or a strap could fray and come loose at the worst possible moment. A wooden wheel, constantly being abused by a rough road, would eventually give way. Imagine you're on a cart, going down a steep hill, when suddenly a wheel shears off. You'd be sent tumbling down the hill, a chaotic mess of wood, cargo, and human limbs. A modern car breakdown is an expensive inconvenience. An ancient cart breakdown is a potentially fatal disaster, leaving you stranded in the middle of nowhere with no one to call for help. You choose the land route first, because the sea is a whole other kind of monster. The path you follow is a remnant of a great empire. Maybe the Persians, maybe the Romans. The road is supposed to be a marvel, a testament to civilization. But it's mostly just a collection of uneven, cracked flagstones. You're not in a car. You're not even on a bicycle. You're walking. Every step is your own effort, your own energy. And with every step, you are more acutely aware of just how small you are against the vastness of the landscape. It's funny how a good road can feel like a smooth highway, and a bad one can feel like a series of never-ending potholes. The ancient equivalent is a good road where you only trip 3 times a day, and a bad road where you lose your footing every third step. The intellectual debate among historians on ancient transportation is a fun one. Historians still debate whether the lack of advanced vehicle technology, such as rudimentary shock absorbers or steering mechanisms, was due to a lack of engineering knowledge or a conscious choice to prioritize durability and ease of repair over comfort. Was the Roman cart primitive because they didn't know how to make it better? Or because a simple, rugged design was more practical for a world with no repair shops? You're starting to think it's a bit of both. A broken cart is better than no cart at all, especially when you're in the middle of a desert. Maybe you are lucky enough to join a caravan. The rhythmic clopping of hooves and the creaking of the cartwheels become a hypnotic lullaby that keeps you just on the edge of sleep. But there's no luxury here. Your seat is a hard wooden plank, and the suspension is really just your body's ability to absorb the relentless jarring motion without completely falling apart. You're a passenger, but you are not comfortable. You spend hours staring at the backside of the mule in front of you, dreaming of a soft bed. As you ride, you see other travelers. Some are in carts like yours, others are walking. They all look tired, dusty, and wary. No one makes eye contact. Everyone is a stranger, and in this world, that's not a good thing. You're a part of a collective, but you are also utterly alone. The unspoken rule is mind your own business. Don't ask questions. Don't get involved. Speaking of mules, the creatures of burden are the real heroes of this story. Without them, there would be no long-distance trade, no empires, no way to move goods or people. They're stoic, dependable, and a lot less whiny than the humans on their backs. They are, however, still animals. They get spooked, they get sick, and they can bolt at the worst possible moment. Imagine clinging to the side of a rattling cart as the mule decides a butterfly's a personal affront and takes off at a sprint. Your only choice is to hold on for dear life and hope the wheel doesn't fly off a cliff. A joke for you. Why did the ancient horseman get a promotion? Because he was outstanding in his field. Get it? A field. Okay. How about this one? What do you call a Roman road that's on fire the Appian way? Appian. On fire. Okay, I'm done. The landscape changes slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. The rolling hills give way to flat plains. The familiar trees are replaced by strange, gnarled scrub. Your mind starts to play tricks on you. Is that a person in the distance? Or just an oddly shaped rock? Is that the sound of a fellow traveler, or the whisper of something much less friendly? The light-hearted sarcasm of the present day fades away, replaced by a deep, instinctual watchfulness. You learn to listen to the silence as much as you listen to the sounds. The road is also a perfect hunting ground for bandits. They know where the choke points are, where the road narrows, where the terrain is difficult. They know that a cart full of goods is a prize worth taking. The constant low-level hum of fear returns, but this time, it's not the fear of nature, it's the fear of other people. You're constantly scanning the horizon, looking for any sign of trouble, a strange rider in the distance, a glint of steel in the bushes. You're not just a traveler, you're a target. One of the great common historical facts of ancient travel is the reliance on celestial navigation. Long before the compass, sailors and desert travelers used the sun, moon, and stars as their guides. This was a sophisticated system, a science and an art passed down through generations. The Phoenicians, for example, were masters of the seas, navigating the Mediterranean with remarkable precision. They used the position of the North Star, or Polaris, to determine their latitude. You would lie on the deck of your ship, feeling the cold salt spray on your face, and track the slow, steady arc of the constellations. Your life, and the lives of everyone on board, depended on your ability to read the sky like a book. No clouds, no problem. But what if a thick, gray blanket of clouds rolled in, you were suddenly blind? Adrift? A ship without a rudder? Guided by nothing but hope and the whim of the currents? Even the simple act of stopping for the night is a gamble. You can't just pull over to the side of the road and sleep. That's an invitation to be robbed. Or worse. You have to find a safe place. A place with other people. A caravan stop. A small village. But even those places are not always what they seem. They are places of commerce. But they are also places of predators. The ancient world had no Yelp reviews. You had to trust your gut. And your gut, as we've seen, is not always right. And let's not even get into the sheer difficulty of figuring out longitude. Without a reliable clock, it was basically an educated guess. You'd hope for a clear night, a steady hand to draw a line in the dirt, and a healthy dose of luck. Your sat-nav was a glorified sundial that didn't work at night. And your weather forecast was a guy squinting at the clouds and making a nervous pronouncement. And what about the animals? The mule is a simple beast of burden, but a good horse is a valuable commodity. A horse in the ancient world was a Ferrari, a symbol of power and wealth. But they were also a liability. They got sick, they got hurt, and they could be stolen. A long journey on horseback would require a great deal of skill, patience, and money. You'd have to feed the horse, water it, and care for it, all while caring for yourself. It was a partnership, a very expensive and very risky one. Now, for a detail that's a little less known. Before we had GPS and sophisticated weather reports, we had birds. The ancient practice of using live birds for navigation, often a raven or a dove, was surprisingly effective. You'd release the bird and watch which direction it flew. The bird, an expert at finding land, would point the way to the nearest shore. This was a technique used by early Viking explorers, among others. Imagine the scene: a desperate crew, lost at sea for weeks, placing all their hopes on a single bird fluttering away into the blue expanse. The moment it disappeared from view, you had to just trust that it was right. No turning back, no second guess. It's the original follow your gut feeling, but with feathers, the road continues. And you realize that the danger of ancient travel wasn't just about the lack of modern technology, it was about the lack of a safety net. If something went wrong, you were on your own. No one was coming to help. Your survival depended entirely on your own wits, your strength, and your luck. The road is a symbol of progress, of civilization. But it is also a symbol of a world that was still, at its core, wild and unforgiving. As you trudge along the land route, the constant exposure to the elements starts to wear you down. The sun burns your skin, the wind chaps your lips, and the dust gets into everything: your food, your clothes, your hair. You begin to understand why so many ancient cultures had such a deep reverence for water. The simple act of finding a clear spring feels like a miracle. But even water is a gamble. We'll get to that later, but for now, you just have to hope it's safe. There are no water filters, no purification tablets, just a prayer and a deep, thirst-quenching gulp. You're starting to see a settlement in the distance now. A cluster of buildings, a plume of smoke from a fire. It looks like a town, a real one. The road is getting more crowded, with more travelers, more carts. The rhythm of the mule's hooves is now a welcome sound, a sign that you're almost there. But you also feel a new kind of tension. The The physical dangers of the road might be over, but a whole new set of dangers awaits you. The dangers of a crowded, bustling, and unforgiving civilization. The dangers of trade, of money, of deceit. The journey continues, but it's about to change. The intellectual debate among historians on ancient travel is fascinating. For instance, historians still debate whether the massive megalithic structures of ancient Europe were primarily for religious ceremonies or served as sophisticated wayfinding markers for early travelers. With their alignments pointing to key celestial events, were these places of worship, or were they the original roadside signs, telling you that if you kept walking toward the setting sun for 3 more days, you'd find a good place to trade? The truth is probably a bit of both. The lines between science and spirituality were much blurrier then. When your life depended on the stars had to be holy. The first thing you notice about the town is the smell. It's not the fresh, clean scent of a forest after a rain, or the dry, dusty scent of the open road. It's a pungent, complex perfume of wood smoke, livestock, unwashed bodies, and the simmering aroma of a stew you can't quite identify. It's the smell of humanity, and after days of silent, lonely travel, it's a welcome assault on your senses. But it's also a warning. Where there are people, there is commerce. And where there is commerce, there is deception. The rhythm of your journey is determined by the natural world. You walk when the sun is up, you rest when it's down. There are no streetlights. The darkness is absolute, a heavy, velvet blanket of night that swallows the world whole. Your only light is a small, sputtering flame from a tallow candle or a fire you've managed to get going. The fire is a beacon of hope and a shield against the things that lurk in the dark. It's also a perfect advertisement for any bandits who might be watching from the hills. You have to make a choice: be cold and unseen, or warm and vulnerable. There's no easy answer. You're walking through a marketplace, a dizzying maze of stalls and shouting merchants. This is your chance to restock your supplies, to trade your goods for things you actually need. But it's not as simple as a modern trip to the grocery store. The most common historical fact about ancient trade is that it was a bartering system, or a system of coinage that was often unreliable. Coins were not standardized. A coin from one region might be worth a fraction of its value in another. And even if you had the right coins, they could be shaved down, diluted with other metals, or just plain fake. It was a constant game of buyer beware, and you were the one who had to do the detective work. The first few days blend into a painful, monotonous blur. Your feet ache, your stomach growls, and every fiber of your being just wants to lie down and stop moving. But you can't. You have to keep going. The ancient world has no pity for the weak. You either make it, or you don't. And if you don't, your body will become a part of the landscape. A lesson for the next traveler to be more prepared. The dangers aren't just from bandits or bad weather. They're also from the sheer, soul-crushing exhaustion of the journey itself. It's a battle of will as much as it is a battle for survival. You're not just walking, you're fighting for every single step. You're holding a small silver coin in your hand. The merchant is asking for it in exchange for a loaf of bread and a new water skin. You turn the coin over in your palm, your brow furrowed in concentration. Is it real? Is it worth what he says it is? You have no way of knowing for sure. You have to trust the merchant, a complete stranger, a man who has every incentive to cheat you. And so the transaction becomes less about trade and more about a negotiation, a test of wills. It's a game of bluff and bluster, and you hope you're better at it than he is. One of the great dangers on a journey like this is a simple injury. A sprained ankle, a deep cut from a sharp rock. Anything that slows you down is a potential death sentence. A sprained ankle in the modern world is an inconvenience. A sprained ankle in the ancient world is a sign that you might be about to meet your maker. There's no one to call for help. Your companions might carry you for a while, but eventually they will have to make a difficult choice. Their survival depends on moving forward, and you, a burden, will be left behind. It's a harsh reality, but it's the only reality there is. Here's a little-known detail about ancient trade. Some traveling merchants would use a touchstone, a small, smooth piece of black rock, to test the purity of gold and silver. You would rub your coin on the stone, and then rub a known, pure coin on it, and compare the streaks. The color and texture of the streak would tell you if your coin was a fake. It sounds like a magic trick, but it was an effective tool. A traveler who didn't have a touchstone was at a serious disadvantage. A sitting duck for any merchant who wanted to pass off a fake coin. You're trying to remember if your father taught you this trick, or if he just told you to be wary of everyone. And what about those early roads? Those supposed marvels of engineering. They were often more dangerous than they looked. Take the Roman roads, for instance. They were incredibly well built, designed for efficiency, but they were also often elevated, with deep ditches on either side to prevent flooding. This was great for drainage, but terrible if you were a traveler on foot or in a cart at night. A simple misstep could send you plunging into a ditch, twisting an ankle or worse. And if your cartwheel broke, you were done. Fixed gear travel was a lot more literal back then. The intellectual debate among historians on ancient commerce is a fun one. Historians still debate whether the widespread use of counterfeit currency was a sign of a failing economy, or if it was just a natural byproduct of a diverse, unregulated system where every merchant was a king and every traveler was a pawn. Was the rampant forgery a symptom of a larger problem, or was it just business as usual? You're starting to think it's a bit of both. The ancient world had no Better Business Bureau, no consumer protection laws. You were on your own. The journey forces you to become a student of the world. You learn to identify edible plants from poisonous ones. You learn to read the direction of the wind and the subtle changes in the weather. You become a meteorologist, a botanist, a geologist, and a survivalist all at once. And you learn these things not from a book, but from a constant, brutal, and unforgiving trial and error process. Your life is the price of a bad guess. You manage to trade for some bread and a new water skin. The bread is fresh and warm, a welcome change from the stale, hard brick you've been eating for days. The water skin is new, and smells of fresh hide and a strange, slightly chemical smell that you hope isn't poison. You're tired, you're hungry, and you just want to find a place to rest. But you can't relax. Your mind is still running, still calculating, still trying to figure out if you got a good deal, or if you were just cheated out of your last silver coin. The constant hum of the world around you is not a peaceful sound. It's a symphony of threats. The buzzing of a mosquito that might carry a disease. The distant howl of a wolf. The crack of a branch that could be a wild animal or a lurking thief. You carry a simple knife for defense, but you know it's mostly just for show. Your real defense is your wits, your caution, and your ability to melt into the shadows when you need to. A joke for you? Why did the ancient traveler get in trouble with the Roman authorities? Because he kept trying to steal the census. Okay, fine. How about this one? What do you call a Roman merchant who sells fish? A sellfish. Roman. Get it, selfish. Oh man, these are getting worse. I'll stop now. The stories and rumors you've heard before the journey are now your only guide. There's a village 3 days' walk south of the Great River, where they say the people are friendly and the food is good. But who told you that a drunken man in a tavern who might have been lying? You have no way to verify it. You just have to follow the rumor and hope for the best. The ancient world is full of these ghost stories, these half-truths that you have to take as gospel because you have no other choice. The journey continues. But now it's a different kind of journey. It's a journey of the mind. You're constantly weighing your options, constantly trying to outsmart everyone you meet. You're no longer fighting the natural world. You're fighting a world of human greed, deception, and cunning. And in a way, that's even more dangerous. The natural world is predictable. A storm is a storm. A bandit is a bandit. But a con artist? They can be anything. A friendly face, a helpful guide, a fellow traveler who seems to be in the same boat as you. Your mind, so used to the constant stimulation of the modern world, is now forced to contend with nothing but itself. The long hours of walking, the endless stretches of silent road, give you plenty of time to think. And that, in a way, might be one of the most dangerous things of all. The demons of your past, the fears of your future, they all come out to play on the long, dusty road. There's no distraction, no podcast, no music to drown them out. Just the rhythmic sound of your own feet and the creaking of the cart. You become your own companion, your own enemy. Even the things you're trying to trade are a gamble. You might be carrying a valuable commodity, like a rare spice or a beautiful piece of fabric. But how do you know if it's really valuable? How do you know if you're not being lowballed? You have no market data, no internet, You just have to trust the word of the merchant. And you know, deep down, that you can't. Even if you survive the journey, what will be left of you? The physical scars are one thing. The calloused feet, the sun-worn skin, the healed cuts and bruises. But what about the mental scars? The nights spent shivering in the dark, the constant fear of being ambushed, the terrible things you might have had to do to survive? Ancient travel was not a holiday. It was a transformation. It stripped you of everything you thought you were and rebuilt you from the ground up, into a version of yourself that could survive in a world that was utterly unforgiving. It's a journey from which you could never truly return. The world is a marketplace, and you're just a small-time seller trying to make it to the next town. You're a pawn in a game you don't even understand, and you're just hoping you don't get taken for a ride. The sun is starting to set, and the marketplace is getting less crowded but more dangerous. The con artists and thieves come out at night, looking for an easy mark, a tired traveler who just wants to get a good night's sleep. And you, with your weary eyes and your dusty clothes, look like a perfect target. Yeah, you're starting to see a glimmer of something in the distance. Is it a town? Is it a fire? Your heart quickens. You don't know what you'll find there. You only know that you've made it through another day, another night. The first part of your journey is over, but it's just the beginning of the story. You're starting to look for a place to rest, a place to get a good night's sleep, a place where you can relax and not worry about being robbed or cheated. You see a few inns, a few taverns. They all look a little rough around the edges, a little too inviting. A new set of dangers awaits you. The dangers of a crowded, bustling, and unforgiving civilization. The dangers of a room for the night, or a trap. The journey continues, but it's about to get even more personal. That glimmer you saw in the distance wasn't a town. It wasn't a fire. It was the last angry blush of a sun that was about to disappear, leaving you completely alone with the heavy, velvety darkness. The path you've been on all day is now a faint scar in a world that has gone completely silent. You find a small, flat rock to sit on, your body protesting every single motion. The air, which was so punishingly hot just an hour ago, now bites with a surprising chill. You pull your worn cloak tighter around your shoulders, a meager defense against the encroaching cold and the things you can't see. The sun dips below the horizon, and the town, once a bustling hub of commerce, transforms into a place of shadows and flickering candlelight. The air, which was so thick with the smell of humanity and commerce, is now laced with the heavy, sweet scent of wood smoke and the low hum of conversation from the taverns. You're tired, your muscles ache, and you just want to find a place to rest. You've had enough of the road, enough of the elements, enough of the constant vigilance. You just want a soft bed, a warm meal, and a moment to let your guard down. This is the moment of truth for the ancient traveler. When the sun is gone, you can't just pull over to a motel or check your phone for directions. The world's navigation system has been switched off. But you remember the second part of your lesson. You remember the sky. You tilt your head back, ignoring the crick in your neck from hours of walking, and you look up. The stars are not the faint, washed-out specks you're used to seeing through city light pollution. They are bright, sharp points of light, millions of them, a shimmering ocean of cosmic dust and distant suns. It's breathtaking, sure, but it's also a textbook, a map. You see a few inns, their signs swinging in the gentle breeze. They look rough, but inviting. A little too inviting. Maybe. The most common historical fact about ancient inns is that they were not what we would call hotels. They were often just a room in a private house, a communal space where travelers, merchants, and even criminals would sleep together on a bed of straw. Privacy was a luxury, and a very rare one at that. You'd be sleeping next to a complete stranger, a person whose intentions you couldn't possibly know, and your possessions, your hard-won goods and coins, would be just a few feet away, a tempting prize for anyone who might want to take them. The most common historical fact about navigation, especially for those on the move at night, is that the North Star, or Polaris, was the key to everything in the Northern Hemisphere. It's the one star that doesn't seem to move. Every other star in the sky appears to rotate around it throughout the night. By finding Polaris, you could always find North. You would have been taught a simple trick to find it. Find the Big Dipper constellation, a group of 7 bright stars that looks like a ladle. The two stars at the end of the bowl of the ladle, called the pointers, form a straight line that points almost directly at Polaris. It's a simple, elegant system, and it works every time, as long as you can see the stars. You choose an inn, a small, dark building, with a sign that says, in a crude scrawl, "The Weary Traveler." You push open the heavy wooden door, and the first thing that hits you is the noise. It's a loud, chaotic symphony of drunken laughter, clanking mugs, and a low, angry drone of conversation from a group of men huddled in a corner. The air is thick with the smell of stale ale, sweat, and cheap tobacco. This isn't a place of rest. It's a place of danger. But what happens when the clouds roll in? We touched on it briefly, but let's really lean into the panic of that moment. You're walking a desert path at night. Polaris is your only guide, and suddenly, a thick blanket of clouds obscures your celestial map. The sky is now a featureless gray canvas. You stop dead in your tracks. The confident forward momentum you had just a moment ago evaporates, replaced by a cold, stomach-lurching dread. You're lost. Absolutely, irrevocably lost. All your carefully planned steps, all your hard-won knowledge, suddenly counts for nothing. It's like your GPS suddenly started speaking in a language you don't understand, and then just shut off. Here's a little-known detail about ancient inns. Some would have a watchman or a guard who would patrol the premises. A kind of ancient security system. But this watchman was often just a regular guy with a club, and his loyalty could be bought for a few coins. He was as much a part of the problem as he was a part of the solution. You'd be sleeping with one eye open, listening for the footsteps of the watchman, and also listening for the footsteps of the person who might be trying to bribe the watchman. It was a constant, low-level paranoia, a mental marathon that never seemed to end. So you wait. You huddle in the darkness, hoping the clouds will pass. But what if they don't? What if it's a storm? Now you have a new problem, one that doesn't care about your destination. You're wet, you're cold, and the path is turning into a muddy, treacherous mess. You realize that ancient navigation wasn't about a single method. It was about a constant process of adaptation and a deep, intimate understanding of every tool at your disposal. The intellectual debate among historians on ancient inns is a fun one. Historians still debate whether the poor conditions of ancient inns were a reflection of a lack of hospitality, or if they were a deliberate way to keep a traveler on their toes, to make sure they were always ready for a fight. Was the lack of a private room a sign of a society that didn't value personal space? Or was it a form of social engineering, a way to make sure that a traveler was always aware of their surroundings? You're starting to think it's a bit of both. The ancient world was not a place of comfort. It was a place of constant survival. Speaking of obscure details, here's one for you. In ancient Persia, travelers used a navigational device called a kamal. It was a simple block of wood with a string threaded through the center. You would hold the block at arm's length with the string in your teeth and line up the bottom edge of the block with the horizon and the top with the specific star. By marking the point on the string where it met your teeth, you could measure the star's altitude. This created a consistent measurement that allowed you to maintain your latitude. It sounds ludicrously simple, but it was an effective tool for sailors and caravan leaders navigating vast, featureless landscapes. So you might find yourself sitting there in a small block of wood in your hand, a string between your teeth, looking like you're doing a very weird magic trick. But in reality, you're trying to stay alive. You find a spot in the communal sleeping area, a patch of straw on the floor in a corner. You lay your satchel down, using it as a pillow. Your body is screaming for rest, but your mind is wide awake. A hyper-vigilant sentry standing guard against all the unseen dangers in the room. Every snore, every cough, every rustle of straw is a potential threat. You're trying to relax, but you can't. Your senses, which were so finely tuned to the sounds of nature, are now overwhelmed by the sounds of humanity. The lack of a reliable clock, as we mentioned before, Asma was the real killer. You could find north with Polaris, but you had no reliable way to measure longitude, which is your east-west position. This meant you could know you were on the correct line of latitude, but have no idea if you'd traveled too far east or west. For sailors, this was a disaster. You could sail for weeks and think you were approaching land, only to find yourself hopelessly lost. You were at the mercy of guesswork and the whims of the winds and currents. It's the ultimate "are we there yet" moment. But instead of annoying your parents, It could end your life. A joke for you? Why did the ancient traveler get kicked out of the tavern? Because he was a barrel of laughs? Get it? A barrel. Okay, fine. How about this one? What do you call a Roman inn that serves bad food? Abominable. Okay, I'll stop. The intellectual debate around this period is a fun one. Historians still debate whether the astronomical knowledge required for advanced navigation was a closely guarded secret, passed down only through elite families of seafarers and desert guides, or if it was common knowledge among a much broader swath of the population. Was your caravan leader a kind of proto-scientist? Or was he just a guy who knew a bunch of tricks his dad taught him? It's a fascinating question because it speaks to the very nature of knowledge and who was allowed to possess it. Maybe the magical skills of a traveler weren't magic at all, but simply a trade secret that was worth more than gold. The inn is also a place where you're at the mercy of the innkeeper. The food, the drink, the services, they're all priced at whatever the innkeeper feels like charging. You have no way of knowing if you're being overcharged. You have to trust the innkeeper, a man who has every incentive to take you for all you're worth. And so, the inn becomes a different kind of marketplace. A place where you're not just trading for goods, but for your life. Now let's talk about a different kind of navigation. Not of the sky, but of the terrain. You're now back on the dusty track. The sun is up, and you're trying to read the landscape. You're looking for landmarks. A gnarled tree that looks like a man with a broken arm. A twin-peaked hill that looks like a camel's hump. You memorize these things. You create a mental map, a kind of internal GPS, and you hope that your memory doesn't fail you. But what if the landscape changes? What if a landslide has obscured your landmark? What if a flash flood has changed the course of a river? You're back to square one, with nothing but your own faulty memory to guide you. It's a lot of pressure, especially when your legs feel like lead and your head is spinning from the heat. The drink is a whole other problem. The ale is often a murky, low-alcohol brew that's safer than the water, but it's also full of impurities. It's a kind of ancient kombucha, but without the health benefits, the alcohol content is just enough to make you sleepy, but not enough to make you drunk. It's a kind of cruel deception, a drink that promises comfort but delivers only a low-grade, constant headache. You drink it anyway, because what other choice do you have? The concept of a map as we know it didn't really exist for most people. A map was a luxury, a rare and precious object that was often a work of art as much as it was a navigational tool. And they weren't always accurate. Imagine paying a fortune for a map that has a giant sea monster drawn in the middle of a blank spot. You'd probably think, wow, that's beautiful. But also, what do I do now? You can't just call up the cartographer and ask for a refund. So you have to be a skeptic. You have to take the map with a grain of salt, literally and figuratively. The journey continues, but now it's a journey of the inner world. You're constantly fighting against your own fatigue, your own desire to let go, to just close your eyes and sleep. But you can't. You're a traveler in a world that is always, always watching you. And you know, deep down, that the most dangerous place in the world is not the open road. It's the place where you thought you were safe. A little joke for you. Why did the ancient traveler bring a ladder on his journey to get to the high notes of his song? Because you're a bard, of course? No. Okay. Fine. Another one. What's a Roman traveler's favorite type of music? A quadraphonic sound system. Get it, Roman numeral full quad. Never mind. Let's move on. You find yourself awake, or at least on the very edge of consciousness. The sounds of the inn have faded into a dull, hypnotic roar, a kind of auditory sludge that promises rest but doesn't deliver. Your body is heavy, a leaden weight on the straw, but your mind is a bright, frantic flicker, a tiny flame fighting against the darkness. You can't sleep. You can't let go. Every shadow in the corner of the room seems to writhe and shift, every snore a potential prelude to violence. This is the reality of ancient travel, even when you're safe. You're not. The reality of your situation is a constant game of chance. You have a rudimentary map in your head, a few celestial tricks up your sleeve, and a general sense of where you need to go. But you also have to contend with the environment itself. The wind is a compass, but it's a liar. A steady wind from the north is great, but a swirling gale can be disorienting. The sun is a clock, but it's a tricky one. Is it noon, or is it just a cloudy day? A well-placed shadow can throw off your sense of time and direction entirely. You have to be a master of observation, a human sensor suite, constantly taking in data and trying to make sense of it. You realize that a new kind of danger has replaced the old ones. You're no longer fighting the elements or bandits. You're fighting a cultural and social minefield, a place where a wrong word, a wrong gesture, or even a wrong look could get you into a world of trouble. The town is a microcosm of a new society, a place with its own rules, its own customs, its own unspoken laws, and you, a stranger, are an outsider, a person who doesn't know the rules. And what about the animals? We talked about birds as a navigational tool, but what about the beasts of the road? The mules, the horses, the camels. They are all more in tune with the land than you are. They can smell water long before you can see it. They can feel a change in the weather before the first cloud appears. You learn to watch them. You learn to trust them. A nervous horse might be a sign of a predator nearby. A camel that refuses to cross a seemingly solid patch of ground might know something you don't. They are your allies in this hostile world, and their instincts are a much more reliable guide than your own. The most common historical fact about ancient societies is that they were often very insular and suspicious of outsiders. A traveler was seen as a potential spy, a criminal, or a source of bad luck. You're not just a person passing through, you're an object of suspicion, a person who has to prove constantly that you're not a threat. You're an actor in a play you don't know the script to, and the consequences of a bad performance are very, very high. You're walking now. The sun is a bright disk in the sky, and you're using its position to keep you going in a general direction. Your water skin is light, your stomach is growling, and you feel the raw, unfiltered exhaustion of a journey that is not getting any easier. You start to understand that the real challenge of ancient travel wasn't just getting from point A to point B. It was about staying sane while you did it. It was about finding a way to cope with the constant uncertainty, the loneliness, and the fear. The ancient traveler wasn't just a physical hero. They were a mental one, too. You're in the common room now, trying to find a cup of something warm to drink. And you find yourself in the middle of a conversation. It's a loud, boisterous argument between two local men, a shouting match about politics or a local dispute. You're an innocent bystander, but you're also a part of the scene. You have to make a choice. Do you stay and risk being dragged into the argument? Or do you leave and risk looking like you have something to hide? There's no easy answer. A modern bystander can just look at their phone and ignore the conflict. An ancient bystander has to become a chameleon, a person who can blend in and become invisible, or a person who can make themselves useful. Remember those birds from the first part? You're starting to get a little hungry. You wonder if those birds would come back. Probably not. That's a one-way flight, but the thought is a distraction from the reality of your situation. Your supplies are running low. The next part of your journey isn't about finding your way, it's about staying alive on the journey itself. You're starting to think about what you have in your satchel, and whether it's enough to get you to the next town, or if you'll have to start foraging. Your mind wanders to the food you packed: the dried meat, the hard bread, the few pieces of fruit you managed to scrounge. But as we'll see, that food might be more dangerous than you think. Here's a little known detail about ancient cultures: the concept of guest friendship, or xenia in ancient Greece, was a very serious and very intricate social code. You were expected to be a gracious host to a stranger, and the stranger was expected to be a good guest. It was a kind of social contract, a way to make sure that a traveler was not an enemy. But this code of conduct was often very specific to the region, and a traveler who didn't know the rules could easily offend their host and find themselves in a lot of trouble. Imagine you're at a dinner table, and you don't know that in this culture. It's considered rude to use a fork. You would be seen as a savage, a person with no manners, and a person who is not to be trusted. Your survival could depend on your ability to read a room, and to know when to put your fork down. Your head is a little cloudy now, and you're not sure if it's the heat or the hunger. The stars and sun are all fine and good, but they don't fill your belly. You have to keep pushing, keep walking, keep moving. The journey continues, and the world just keeps getting bigger and more dangerous. You can feel the weight of every step, and you can't help but wonder if you're walking toward your destination, or toward a complete unknown. The intellectual debate among historians on ancient social codes is a fun one. Historians still debate whether the harshness of ancient laws against foreigners was a reflection of a deep-seated xenophobia, or if it was a practical way to prevent social unrest and crime, a kind of ancient immigration policy. Was the suspicion of a stranger a sign of a closed-minded society? Or was it a pragmatic way to keep a community safe? You're starting to think it's a bit of both. The ancient world had no police force, no social services. They were on their own, and a stranger was a risk they were not always willing to take. The sun is high, a merciless white disk in a sky that holds no promise of shade. You've been walking for hours, your stomach a hollow, aching drum. Your mind, which was so focused on the stars and the path last night, is now fixated on one single thought food. You reach for the satchel, the one that contains your carefully packed provisions. The hard bread is even harder now, a stale brick that tastes of dust. The dried meat is tough and salty, and the last piece of dried fruit is a shriveled, unappetizing lump. This is your pantry. This is your lifeline. And it's not looking good. A joke for you. Why did the Roman traveler get so good at public speaking? Because he had a lot of experience with the Forum. Get it? The Roman Forum. Okay, I'll stop. In the modern world, we take food preservation for granted. Your fridge keeps things fresh for weeks. Cans, freezers, vacuum-sealed bags. It's a marvel of modern science. But in the ancient world, it was a constant battle against rot, insects, and the sun. The most common historical fact about food preservation in this era was the heavy reliance on salt. Salt wasn't just a flavor enhancer, it was a potent preservative. You would have rubbed your meat with large chunks of rock salt, drying it out to a tough, leathery state. This process, called curing, removed the moisture that bacteria need to grow. The downside. It tasted awful, and it left you constantly, agonizingly thirsty. But it kept you from starving. The journey continues. But now it's a journey of the soul. You're constantly fighting against your own instincts, your own desire to be yourself. You're a person in a mask, a person who has to be constantly aware of their surroundings, constantly trying to figure out what the rules are. You're a social acrobat, a person who has to balance between being polite and being submissive, between being confident and being arrogant. It's a tightrope walk, and a fall could be fatal. You're chewing on a piece of that meat now, and it feels less like food and more like a piece of old leather. It's so salty it makes your throat burn, and you realize that every bite is a trade-off. Food for water, a dangerous equation when water is so scarce. Your journey is now a slow, agonizing process of balancing one kind of pain against another. Hunger against thirst. You see a group of men in the corner of the inn, a group of travelers like yourself. You consider joining them? But you don't. You're too wary, too suspicious. You know, deep down, that a traveler is as likely to cheat you as a local. You're on your own, and you have to accept it. You're a person without a home, a person without a community, and a person who has to make it on their own wits. But what about the other options? Maybe you've heard of some local ancient life hacks for preserving food. Here's a little known detail for you. Ancient Mesopotamians, for instance, were known to preserve food by burying it in the desert sand. The dry heat would act as a natural dehydrator, and the sand would protect the food from insects. It sounds brilliant, right? A desert refrigerator? But imagine digging up your food a week later, only to find it completely encased in a layer of fine, gritty sand. You'd be eating a mouthful of dirt with every bite, and who knows what microscopic creatures were living in that sand. It's a risk, a big one. You're not just eating food, you're eating the ground it came from. It's a kind of culinary roulette, and the odds are not in your favor. You're starting to feel a new kind of loneliness, a kind of deep, existential solitude that you've never felt before. It's the loneliness of a person who has to be constantly on guard, a person who can't trust anyone, a person who has to be alone even when they're in a crowded room. You realize that the physical dangers of the journey were just the beginning. The real danger is the mental toll, the constant, low-level paranoia, the feeling that you are a stranger in a strange land, and that you will always be a stranger, no matter how long you stay. The bread you have is another problem. It's not the soft, fluffy bread we know today. It's a dense, flat, unleavened bread, more like a cracker than a loaf. It was hard-baked to remove all moisture, making it last for weeks. but it was also incredibly hard on your teeth and stomach. You have to dunk it in water to make it edible, and even then, it's a soggy, flavorless mess. And if you didn't have water, you'd be chewing on a stone-like substance, hoping your teeth don't crack. And believe me, a cracked tooth on this journey is a whole other kind of danger we don't even want to think about. You're starting to feel the weight of the world on your shoulders. The weight of your journey. The weight of your fear. The weight of your loneliness. You're a tired, weary traveler, and you're not sure if you can keep going. But you have to. The sun will rise again and the road will be there, waiting for you. A new day, a new set of dangers. The journey continues, and you just have to hope that you're strong enough to make it to the end. The intellectual debate around ancient cuisine is a fun one. Historians still debate whether the use of spices in ancient diets was primarily for flavor and prestige, or if it was a clever way to mask the taste of food that was on the verge of spoiling, especially on long journeys. Was that cumin-flavored jerky a delicacy? Or was it just a way to hide the fact that the meat was a little questionable? You're starting to think it might be the latter. The flavors are so strong they almost burn your mouth, and you're grateful for it. It keeps your mind off the nagging question of whether this food is actually safe to eat. The sun rises, a slow, agonizing bleed of orange and pink across a sky that promises another day of heat and hardship. The inn is slowly stirring to life, a groaning, stretching beast of a building. The sounds are different now. Not the chaotic din of the night, but the purposeful clatter of breakfast being made, the murmur of merchants preparing for a day of haggling, the soft lowing of livestock in the yard outside. You're awake, but not rested. The night has been a mental battlefield, a long, exhausting war of attrition against your own paranoia. You've managed to catch a small bird, or maybe a rabbit. Now what? You have no cooking pot, no stove, just a small fire you managed to build with some dry wood and a flint. You skewer the meat on a stick and hold it over the flames, hoping it cooks all the way through, but you don't really know if it is. The outside might be charred and black, but the inside could still be raw. There's no food thermometer, no way to know for sure. You have to trust your gut, and a lot of the time, your gut is wrong. You're now entering the world of foodborne illnesses, where a bad meal can lead to a fever, a crippling stomachache, or worse. A day spent retching and weak is a day you are not moving forward. It's a day a predator or a bandit can find you. A bad meal isn't just an inconvenience. It's a strategic failure. You feel a sense of dread as you prepare to leave. You've survived the journey, you've survived the inn, but you know that the journey isn't over. This town is just a waypoint, a temporary safe haven. The road, a different kind of road, is waiting for you. You realize that ancient travel wasn't a single journey. It was a series of small, interconnected journeys, each with its own set of dangers and its own set of rules. What about a joke? Here's one. Why did the ancient traveler get fired from the bakery because he kept bringing home the bacon? Literally. He was a nomad. Okay, that one was a bit of a stretch. How about this one? What do you call a Roman who can't eat solid food? A Pompeian, like because they're buried in ash. Okay, fine, they're all bad. Let's get back to the story. You're a different person now. The journey has changed you. The physical scars are one thing, the calloused feet, the sun-worn skin, the healed cuts and bruises. But the mental scars are deeper, more permanent. The constant vigilance, the low-level paranoia, the feeling that you are a stranger in a strange land, it's all a part of who you are now. You're a survivor, a person who has seen the world for what it is, a beautiful, brutal, and unforgiving place. The journey continues, and your pantry is now a constant source of anxiety. You're constantly weighing the risk of eating something that might be spoiled against the risk of starvation. It's a lose-lose situation. You have to eat to survive, but the act of eating might be what kills you. You start to see why so many ancient travelers and armies had such high rates of sickness and death from something as simple as a bad meal. It's a silent killer, one that you can't see or hear. You're walking out of the town now, your satchel feeling a little lighter, your water skin feeling a little fuller, but your mind is still heavy. You're thinking about the people you saw in the town, the merchants with their shrewd eyes, the innkeeper with his greedy hands, the fellow travelers with their own secrets and their own fears. You realize that the most dangerous thing on your journey wasn't a bandit or a wild animal. It was a person. A person who could smile to your face and then stab you in the back for a few silver coins. And remember that salt. It's not just making you thirsty. It's also messing with your body's chemistry. Your body needs a certain amount of salt, but too much can lead to dehydration, cramps, and a whole host of other problems. You're starting to feel a little lightheaded, a little dizzy. Is it the heat, or is it the salt? You don't know. You just have to keep moving and hope for the best. The intellectual debate among historians on ancient psychology is a fun one. Historians still debate whether the constant exposure to danger and hardship in ancient life created a more resilient, emotionally hardened population, or if it led to higher levels of anxiety, paranoia, and mental health issues. Was the ancient traveler a stoic, a person who could endure anything, or were they a person who was constantly on the verge of a nervous breakdown? You're starting to think it's a bit of both. The ancient world didn't have therapists, no mental health support. You were on your own, and you had to find a way to cope with the mental toll of a life that was constantly, relentlessly dangerous. The ancient world didn't have a concept of expiration dates. Your food was good until it wasn't, and wasn't was a very subjective term. Was it a little moldy? Scrape it off? Did it have a funny smell? Eat it anyway, you're hungry. Did it have a few bugs crawling on it? Protein. It was a very different kind of relationship with food, one based on a desperate need to survive, not on a desire for pleasure or comfort. You start to understand why so many ancient religious traditions had fasting built into them. Maybe it wasn't just for spiritual reasons. Maybe it was also a practical way to deal with food shortages and the constant risk of food poisoning. A joke for you. Why did the Roman traveler get so good at telling stories? Because he had a captive audience. Get it, captive. Okay, I'm done. The thought of fresh, clean, safe food feels like a fantasy. You dream of a juicy piece of fruit, a freshly caught fish, a hot loaf of bread right out of the oven. But you know that the reality is a mouthful of salty, gritty, possibly spoiled food. And you eat it anyway, because what other choice do you have? The road ahead is a long one, and you know that you can't afford to let your guard down. You're no longer just a traveler, you're a survivor. You're a person who has to be constantly aware of their surroundings, constantly trying to figure out what the next danger is. You're a person who has to be ready for anything. And you know, deep down, that you are ready. The journey has prepared you for it. The road stretches on, and with every step, you're not just moving through space, you're moving through time, through a different kind of reality. A reality where every decision, no matter how small, has life or death consequences. And the food in your satchel, the very thing that is supposed to keep you alive, is a perfect symbol of that reality. It's a constant reminder that you are not in charge here. The sun is high, and the road stretches out before you. A long, dusty ribbon of possibility and danger. You take a deep breath, a breath that tastes of dust and hope, and you start walking. You don't know where you're going, you don't know what you'll find, but you know that you're strong enough to make it. The journey continues, and you just have to hope that you're strong enough to make it to the end. The salty, grimy taste of your last meal still clings to your mouth, a constant, nagging reminder of your thirst. Your tongue feels thick, your lips cracked and dry. You've been walking for what feels like an eternity, and the only thing you can think about is water. The thought of it is a beautiful, cruel fantasy, a clear, cold stream running over smooth stones. The sound of it is soft, gentle music. A bucket of it, icy and clean, pulled from a deep, shaded well. But reality is a dusty, cracked riverbed that hasn't seen a drop of water in weeks. The sun is a high, burning coin in the sky, and you're walking again. This time, the road feels different. It's not the dusty, lonely track of the wilderness, nor the crowded, suspicious gauntlet of the town. It's something in between. You're on a well-traveled road that cuts through a vast, fertile plain. The air smells of dry grass and the distant promise of a river. The rhythm of your walk is a hypnotic thrum. A sound you've become so accustomed to it feels like an extension of your own heartbeat. In the modern world, we just turn on a tap. We buy a bottle of water from a shop. We have filters, purification tablets, and a deep, abiding trust that the water we drink won't kill us. In the ancient world, that trust was a luxury you couldn't afford. The most common historical fact about ancient water was that it was often contaminated. People didn't understand about germs and bacteria. They just knew that some water made you sick, and some didn't. The safest bet was a spring or a well because it came from deep underground, away from the surface contamination. But even those were a gamble. A dead animal could have fallen in. A careless person could have washed their dirty hands in it. Every sip of water was a roll of the dice. But this new phase of the journey is not without its own unique terrors. The most common historical fact about ancient travel on open plains is the constant, unblinking presence of the horizon. In the wilderness, you could hide behind a hill, a rock, or a tree. In a town, you could disappear into a crowd. Here, there is nowhere to hide. You are a small, solitary figure on a vast, flat canvas, and anyone with a good eye can see you from miles away. You feel exposed, vulnerable, a tiny target against a boundless sky. You finally find a river. It's wide and slow-moving, a sluggish ribbon of murky brown. It looks bad. Really bad. You can see things floating in it, and the smell is not what you call fresh. But you're so thirsty you could drink the sand. You kneel at the edge, your hands shaking, and look at the water. This is a moment of pure, raw desperation. You know, instinctively, that this water is a risk. But the alternative is certain death. You see a group of people in the distance. They are too far away to tell if they are a threat or not. They could be a friendly caravan, a group of farmers, or a pack of bandits waiting for you to get closer. You don't know. You have to make a choice. Do you keep walking straight and hope for the best? Or do you veer off the path and risk getting lost? There is no right answer. Every decision is a gamble, a test of your instincts. So what do? You remember a little-known detail from your training. A trick passed down through generations of travelers. You find a piece of cloth, preferably a clean one, if such a thing exists in your satchel, and you use it to filter the water. You dip the cloth into the river and then wring it out into your cupped hands. The idea is that the cloth will catch the bigger pieces of debris and some of the filth, leaving you with something that's a little less gross. It's a filtration system that would make a modern engineer laugh, but it's all you have. You drink the slightly less brown liquid, and the relief is immediate and overwhelming. But in the back of your mind, a small, insidious voice whispers, "What about the things you can't see?" Here's a little-known detail about ancient plains travel. Many travelers would carry a small, polished metal mirror, not for vanity, but for communication. You could use it to flash a signal to a distant caravan, a kind of ancient Morse code. A series of short flashes could mean friend. A series of long flashes could mean danger. It was a simple, ingenious system, a way to connect with other travelers from a safe distance. But it was also a dangerous system. A bandit with a mirror could lure you into a trap. A friendly-looking signal could be a lie. So you're walking, your eyes constantly scanning the horizon, looking for a flash of light, and wondering if it's a sign of a friend or a foe. The intellectual debate among historians on ancient water is a fascinating one. Historians still debate whether the ancient practice of adding alcohol to drinking water, particularly wine, was primarily for flavor, or if it was a rudimentary form of sterilization, as the alcohol could kill some of the harmful bacteria. Was that a glass of wine you're drinking? Or was it a form of ancient purification? You're starting to think it's a bit of both. The alcohol would make the water more palatable. Sure. But it also gave you a fighting chance against a microscopic enemy you didn't even know existed. The intellectual debate among historians on ancient communication is a fun one. Historians still debate whether the use of such rudimentary signaling systems fostered a sense of community among travelers, or if it just created a new, more elaborate form of deception. Was the mirror a symbol of hope and connection, or was it a new tool for a cunning criminal? You're starting to think it's a bit of both. The ancient world was not a place of simple answers. It was a place of nuance, a place where a single object could be both a tool and a weapon. You keep walking, the river at your side. Your thirst is quenched for now, but your stomach feels a little off. A gurgling sound echoes from your belly, a sound that doesn't sound friendly. You remember the old saying that the ancients had Never trust a river you can see the bottom of? That's because if you can see the bottom, it's either too shallow to be a reliable source of water, or it's so clear that it's probably a stagnant pond full of invisible dangers. You can't see the bottom of this river, but you also can't see what's floating in it. It's a constant, maddening paradox. A joke for you. Why did the ancient traveler bring a tent to the desert? Because he wanted to be attentive to his surroundings. Get it, attentive. Okay, fine. How about this one? What do you call a Roman who can't cross a river? I'll stop now. A joke for you. Why was the ancient traveler so bad at poker? Because he was always bluffing, and his tells were really bad. Okay, fine. How about this one? What do you call a Roman with a leaky water skin? A hydra-ted mess. Wait, that doesn't make sense. I'm just going to stop. The journey continues. But now it's a journey of the mind. You're constantly battling against your own imagination, your own fears. Every distant figure is a potential threat. Every rustle in the grass is a potential animal. Every shadow is a potential hiding place. You're a person who has to be constantly aware, constantly on guard, even when there is no visible danger. The loneliness of the open plain is a kind of mental torture, a place where your own mind becomes your greatest enemy. The water you're carrying now in your recently filled skin is another source of anxiety. The skin itself is made of animal hide, and it's not exactly sterile. It's a breeding ground for bacteria. You're not just drinking water, you're drinking the water that has been marinating in a hairy, leathery sack for hours, possibly days. The taste is a mixture of river water, salt, and something else. Something you don't want to think about. You're now a walking petri dish, and you just have to hope that your body can fight off whatever it's now carrying. You're starting to feel a new kind of exhaustion, a kind of deep, spiritual fatigue that goes beyond physical tiredness. It's the fatigue of a person who has been on a mental battlefield for weeks, a person who has had to be constantly on guard, constantly making life or death decisions. You're a person who has seen the world for what it is, and you're not sure if you can ever go back to being the person you were before. The journey continues, but now it's a different kind of journey. It's a journey of the gut. You're constantly aware of every little twinge and ache, every strange sound coming from your stomach. You're a hypochondriac, but for good reason. A modern hypochondriac worries about a sniffle. An ancient hypochondriac worries about death. You start to understand why so many ancient religious traditions had rituals for purifying water. It wasn't just a spiritual act, it was a desperate attempt to stay alive. The road ahead is a long one, and you know that you can't afford to let your guard down. You're no longer just a traveler, you're a survivor. You're a person who has to be constantly aware of their surroundings, constantly trying to figure out what the next danger is. You're a person who has to be ready for anything, and you know, deep down, that you are ready. The journey has prepared you for it. The river eventually turns into a trickle, and then disappears altogether. You're back on a dry, dusty road, with a water skin that feels suspiciously light, and a stomach that feels suspiciously full of something. You know that the water you drank might be the thing that ends your journey. Not a bandit or a wild animal. It's a cruel irony. The one thing you needed to survive might be the very thing that takes your life. The sun is high and the road stretches out before you. A long, dusty ribbon of possibility and danger. You take a deep breath, a breath that tastes of dust and hope, and you start walking. You don't know where you're going. You don't know what you'll find, but you know that you're strong enough to make it. The journey continues, and you just have to hope that you're strong enough to make it to the end. The world is not your friend. The land, the food, the water, they are all conspiring against you. They are all testing you, pushing you to your limits, and then pushing a little further. The ancient traveler wasn't a hero, they were a survivor. They were someone who had to make impossible choices every single day, and hope that they were the right ones.